y'all, welcome and welcome back. So I am here to read one of your guys' story today. It is on the longer side, so I'm going to give it its own video. It's on Spotlight, and it takes place in northern Kentucky. So I know it's going to be horrific just because it's around the Appalachian Mountains. Once I know that that's the location, we are in for a time. So get cozy, close all your windows, make sure they're locked, make sure your doors are locked, and turn on a light for this one. I want to start this off by saying that I really enjoy listening to your stories along with the stories that are sent in to you. Watching your videos is what has made me decide that it was finally time to put out all of the things that I've experienced into words. I'd love to hear your input on all of this. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in northern Kentucky. The closest thing to a city was at least a half an hour away from where I lived. I lived in 2 different houses growing up, but all except for one of the stories that I'm sharing with you come from the farm that my mom's side of the family owns and has lived in for as long as anyone can remember. I've since moved away to Tennessee, but my family is still there. So here are the stories. Story number 1. This thing happened on 2 separate occasions, but I can't help but feel like there's some sort of connection between them. The house that I grew up in was built in 1920, and I've always and still do get weird vibes from it. This 2-story family farmhouse with a questionable wooden staircase that has a landing and a small wooden switchback close to that top. Now, the first part happened when I was home alone. I had just got home from school and let my dog out back. While she was outside, I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I walked past this staircase, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my dog sitting on the landing. I did a double take, but didn't stop. I knew she was outside, so I continued to walk to the back door and let her in. I never thought twice about it, and I knew what I had seen, but I also knew that it wasn't right. Now, the next part of this story happened probably a month or so later. One of my friends was over staying the night, and we were upstairs in my room, on FaceTime with some of our other friends. It was probably close to 1 or 2 in the morning, and she went down to the bathroom. I stayed in bed on the phone, and it was a little while later when my friend finally came back up. She seemed a little shook up and started asking me where I went. I asked her what she was talking about and explained that I hadn't left my room, and our friend that was on the phone even reiterated to her that I hadn't gone anywhere. We just sort of brushed it off and moved on with talking to our friend. It wasn't until he hung up that she brought it up again and told me what had happened. Apparently, she was coming out of the bathroom and saw me walk around the doorway into the dining room. She decided to follow me, but as she got around the corner, no one was there. She looked around downstairs and even checked out the back door, which had been locked, before she came back up. Now, I'm not sure if these 2 things are related, but I can't help but have the feeling that they are. So the fact that it happened twice tells me that it very much could have been a mimic. It was at least something mimicking to get attention. But I'm curious to know if anything like that happened again. And I haven't read these stories yet, so maybe they'll tell us if there are. But, if something sounded like someone when that person wasn't there or anything like that. I'm really curious to know if that happened as well. Story number 2. This is probably going to be a longer story, but I need someone to know what happened. I never bothered to tell my family, and I doubt they would have believed me anyways. They probably would have just said someone was trying to do some work or something. This happened from the summer of 2018 until the spring of 2019, when I was 17 and 18. The summer of 2018, I had surgery on my ankle and had to spend a few weeks sleeping downstairs in our living room since I couldn't go up and down the stairs easily with my soft cast. It was hard to sleep in that living room, as I would often hear weird sounds coming from the back porch in the middle of the night, and the laundry room that was connected would be darker than it should have been, if that makes sense. I would often just lay there on the couch and ignore anything going on, but then it got worse. Now, in my house, we always had this unspoken rule that the blinds close as it gets dark and not open until the sun comes up. Well, one night, apparently, someone forgot. My grandmother called me into her room for something, and as I made my way into the living room, into her room, I went past a window. This window in the dining room had the blinds still up. I made the mistake of looking out, and that was the first time I saw it. This large black figure just standing outside the window, facing the house. I don't remember it having a face, but somehow I knew it was staring at me. It was far enough back from the window that I could see all of it. It was too tall, probably close to 7 or 8 feet. I did the only thing I could think of, and I put my head down and continued on my crutches to my room. I didn't see it again for a few months, but the next time was worse. I was back upstairs in my room at this point, and my room was right at the top of the stairs, and it was a small space with an open closet that used to be a chimney and a small wooden door to the middle of one wall that went to my grandmother's sewing room / attic area. When my grandmother would use her sewing room, she would always leave the door open, and I would shut it as soon as I came in. The room scared the hell out of me. This particular night, for some reason, I was going to bed without closing the sewing room door. It's important to note that before this night, I had never experienced sleep paralysis, and I haven't since. I've been sleeping for what I assume was a few hours with my eyes open. I could hear my dog near my side in the bed growling. She still, to this day, has never been a dog that barks or growls. She's very quiet and just chill about everything, but she was growling. I tried to move to touch her, but I couldn't. My arms wouldn't move, my legs wouldn't move. I couldn't move at all, and I began to panic. I tried to yell, but no sound came. It was honestly the scariest moment of my life, and then it gets worse. My dog went silent and looked towards the sewing room door. All I could do was turn my eyes that way. That's when I saw it. The same thing that I'd seen outside the window was now crouching through the sewing room door, standing back up straight before it walked on the left side of my bed, looking straight at me. Trying to get away was pointless. I still couldn't move, so I did the only thing I could think of. I squeezed my eyes shut. I stayed like that for just a moment before I opened them again. When I opened my eyes, it was gone, and once again I could move. My dog was still staring at the sewing room door, and the hair on her back bristled. That's how I knew it wasn't just a bad dream. I quickly grabbed her and pulled her under the covers with me. I spent the rest of that night awake and my head under the covers, not wanting to risk seeing it again. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time I saw it. Before I talk about the last time, it's important to note that I have never been a sleepwalker. There are only 2 times in my almost 24 years that I have ever done it, and both had weird circumstances around it. If that's what it really was. I can tell you about the other one as well if you'd like. I absolutely want to hear about the other one. Just putting that out there really fast. This was in May of 2019. We had a horse that we were checking on every 2 hours at night, and so my mom went out at 8. I would go out at 10 and so on. When my turn rolled around at 2 in the morning, I remember waking up to my alarm and getting out of bed. After that was where things got weird. I thought I was dreaming, that I was holding the hand of the same dark figure from the other times, and it was walking me out through the horse field and into the woods. And then I woke up, snapped out of it, whatever really happened to be, and I was standing in the middle of the ridge on that field. I freaked out and started running out of the field. I jumped the gate and didn't stop until I was in the barn with the horses. I found my phone in my pocket and it was almost 4 in the morning. I had been outside for almost 2 hours. I turned on my flashlight and ran all the way back to my house. I went straight into the bed and decided to skip my 6 a.m. shift. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't wake up or whatever, but I'm certainly glad that I did. I want to finish off this email with 2 shorter stories. Hold on, I don't think I can, move away from that one. What? When I tell you that is one of the scariest things that I have ever read in my life, could you imagine? You keep seeing this shadow figure. It has given you sleep paralysis, okay? And all of a sudden you think you're dreaming. You're holding its hand. It's walking you to the woods, the worst place to be walked by a shadow figure. And then you wake up expecting to be cozy in your bed, just ready for comfort from this bad dream, and you're at the edge of the... I'm sorry. The way I would have kept running until I hit another country. Let's go to story number 3. We all know the rules about whistling. However, when you're almost 100 acres and trying to call the horses over from the next ridge, you kind of need to whistle. My family's solution to this was a very particular series of notes that would be whistled to call the animals. We used it for the horses in the field, the dogs in the yard, and each other in the hayfield. It had even been used by my great-great-grandfather for the cattle that he had kept on that land from the 40s until the early 2000s. When I was little, I never understood why I wasn't allowed to whistle to call the Hold on! I just had a revelation. Hold on. Okay. My family, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt the story. My family, I grew up on a farm with my family. And my parents, my dad specifically and my grandfather, to get the cows' attention, never whistled. They said a phrase. And it wasn't a whistle. It was 2 words. They never whistled to get those cows' attention. I'm tearing up. Oh my God, that's so scary. I never put that together until just now. I'm so sorry. Let me go back to the story. When I was little, I never understood why I wasn't allowed to whistle to call in the horses, but once I learned it, I didn't think much of it. I didn't think much of it until recently that I wasn't allowed to practice the whistle anywhere outside of my great-grandparents' house. They were the ones who taught me, and they were the ones who decided when I was ready to use it. I wasn't allowed in the hayfield or the horse field until I could do it. I once asked my papa when I was older why he had this rule, and he would tell me because they can't repeat it. I never thought anything of it until recently. I no longer live on that farm and I live in Middle Tennessee, but I still use the whistle when I call my dog in from the yard. About a week ago, I whistled for my dog, the same dog from my previous stories, and she came running inside. I closed the back door and sat on the couch. It wasn't more than a few minutes when I heard a whistle from my backyard. It was almost the same as mine, but not quite. 1 or 2 of the notes were wrong. It wasn't right, and that's when I knew what my papa meant. What? Okay, let's read this final little story. And this is the one that takes place off of the farm, but it takes place in Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So, we're moving from scary to scary. The final thing I want to share this time around takes place at Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. My mom and I go every Halloween night for the haunted house and tours. This happened when I was 14 years old. I remember the haunted house being so much fun and well done, but I want to talk about the tour afterwards. It begins normally, but when we get to the 3rd floor, our guide asks the group for a volunteer to go down the hallway alone to show just how dark it was without our flashlights. Of course, I volunteered. So the guide used their light to shine down the hallway, and I walked until they told me to stop. I turned back to face them, and they turned off the lights. It was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. And then my eyes adjusted slightly, and I could see a shadow standing just inside of one of the doorways beside me. It was tall, its head nearly touching the ceiling. The shadow moved closer to me, but stopped at the same moment that I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was very comforting, and I knew I didn't need to be scared. I looked across the hallway and into another room, and I could see a shadowy shape, and somehow I knew it was a woman and that she was smiling. I smiled back as a way of thanking her for comforting me. Before I was called back by the tour guide, and that was that. We finished our tour and went home. The interaction may have just lasted a moment, but it stuck with me for the last 9 years. If you need me to clarify anything, please let me know, and I will gladly. I can also share quite a few other stories if you're interested in doing that. Thanks for reading. Please do. I will make part 2s. I will name your stories, and I will make part 2s, 3s, 4s, whatever, and we will keep posting your stories. Oh my god. Dude, that little revelation I had in the middle of that has me shook. Because my parents, they were really weird with Appalachian folklore stuff. Like, I was taught, because I grew up on this farm. Here's how it was set up. My parents lived in one house. My aunt and her husband lived in another house. My uncle and his wife lived in another house. And my grandma and grandfather lived in another house. We all grew up on this farm because everyone helped. And everyone did the classic Appalachian rule stuff, like not whistling outside or whatever. But they would have funny reasons for it. Like, I remember my grandmother telling me that I shouldn't whistle or sing in certain places because it would call the devil to me. It was just weird reasons for it, but it was like all the same thing. So now I'm just trying to figure out if that's why they had that strange little phrase, because it couldn't be copied. Because that's one of the only things that I never heard echoed back from the trees now that I think about it. So I'm just having a little bit of a meltdown at the moment. That's so strange. Well, anyways, that is all for me today. Thank you guys for having that life-altering memory unlock with me. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.